Empire State of Baseball on this Monday, April the 11th, 2023. Airing exclusively on Twitch and powered by StreamYard. Gentlemen and ladies, thank you for coming out to episode number 41 of Empire State of Baseball. And don't let my excitement fool you. This is certainly the hangover episode of ESB, considering last week's numbers and the overall draw that we had. And once again, before we kind of get into things here with the lineup, got to thank you all for the love and support for last week's episode 40, our season 2 premiere. Big episode, big draw. Homer Bush was a fantastic guest that we had on our show. And I know we have our YouTube spot later on tonight, so you get the chance to view it on YouTube. We'll give you all those details later on tonight. But gentlemen, Homer Bush last week, what an episode.
Yeah, that was a great one. I mean, Homer Bush, phenomenal guest. Listen, he was a great guy, and the conversation with him, it was so natural. It just sounded like five guys just shooting the breeze, talking baseball, talking New York, talking about guys looking up to, because he was talking about guys like Darryl Strawberry, for example, a veteran by the time he was playing with him with the Yankees. And it was just crazy to see his point of view, because even from his standpoint, he was like star-studded with some of the names he was dropping. And we're star-studded just to see Homer. So it was definitely a cool episode, though. Very chill guy. I'll definitely find my way out to the Ferry Hawks this year. I'd definitely like to go see a game in my hometown of Staten Island. So more to come. But thank you again, Homer, for coming down, and hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, he did a great job. Great guy. Just you could tell he's the kind of guy who loves talking baseball. He loves his job. His son's an up and coming prospect. That's a great thing for him and the family. And having him on was just a great time. Reminiscing about those old Yankee teams, hearing some stories, hearing what he thinks of the rule changes. So that was great. And hopefully we get to talk to him again soon before the year's up, and we'll be out there on a Ferry Hawks game, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully see him in person.
Yeah, I mean, listen, a lot of times you get like former players on and they're talking to the four schmucks here, and they're gonna just mail it in because they're not, why would they care about talking to us? But he was so professional. Again, just seems like the nicest guy. And yeah, echo those sentiments. Would love to get out to a game this year to watch the Ferry Hawks.
Yeah, and the season opens up on April 28th, which is only just a few weeks away. It's a home opener, too, so opening day here in Staten Island for the Ferry Hawks. So it will be cool to go out and check out a few games out there. My favorite story with Homer Bush was the Tino Martinez brawl and him being confused as a ball boy, which was a funny part of that story. And we have some ball boy controversy with the Yankees. There's been a lot of hoopla over the ball boy with the long hair in Cleveland, and the fact that even our favorite Michael K. Love the K-ster. Tom and I love the K-ster. But Michael K. was a little over the top with he should have his head shaved next time he's the visiting clubhouse ball boy. That's crazy stuff.
I mean, listen, if you've listened to enough of the K show, he's joking most of the time. Like he wasn't being serious. I think his point was that if George Steinbrenner was still around, he probably would have said something about it. But in all honesty, Kay eventually he said at the end, like, listen, this is not the Yankees. The Yankees can't tell this kid to cut his hair. We've beaten that drum. I feel like enough of the hair rule is ridiculous, and the Yankees should just abolish it. But it is a little jarring, I will say, to see someone in the Yankee uniform with not even long hair. Like that kid has he had like a mustache too, so like a ball adolescent.
And listen, hey, George would have never allowed it. I mean, let's be real. The Yankees are starting to become lax. But at the end of the day, a club rule is a club rule, and
yeah, I mean they don't employ that. I'm sure that's just
I'm sure
visiting ball boy for Cleveland.
We get a little crazy when we go to the ball boys and people. I mean,
listen,
I see the argument that traditionalists have and say
I heard enough of them on the K show today.
And you're in a uniform.
some of these ass clown old man fans are just like, this is disrespectful to the uniform. Like, get the F out of here, buddy. Like, grow up. It's ridiculous that like you're getting on this like 16-year-old kid because he has long hair. You're just probably jealous because you're bald and you look like a loser.
And I'll tell you what, it feels like yesterday too. Like going back, I remember when Johnny Damon joined the Yankees way back when.
That
They
was
had
one guy's point today.
Clipper.
I mean that he had the whole back page of the Daily News of him just sitting in the barber's chair getting cut.
Yep.
So that's wild. But yeah, definitely interesting story when the ball boy is making the news. But the Yankees overall, though, listen, I know we'll get into it a little more later though. But Frenchie Cordero, nice surprise over the last few games. Big game today so far. So. A lot of interesting talking points to the Yankees, and we'll definitely dive into it a little more detail coming up soon.
We will, and we will also dive into the New York Metropolitans as you see the lineup card displayed in our ticker here. We're going to kick things off with the Queen's Gambit in just a little bit. The Fantasy Hot Corner, hosted by Jonathan Hernandez, makes its return. So we're going to dive into some fantasy baseball pickups for the week. We're also going to get into the Yankees with the Bronx is burning. So we have a few things to touch on. Obviously, we're going to talk all about Franchi Cordero and some of these next man up Yankees that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, really filling some big shoes there. And finally, another returning segment, Trick of the Trade, will also make its return. So you guys can take a stab at some past Yankees and Mets trades that we've seen over time, and guess who is involved in those certain trades. So we got some cool ones later on tonight. But I did promise the Queen's Gambit, so let's get kicked off with some Mets talk. And we look at the Mets, and so far over this weekend series, they had a good series against the Marlins, despite dropping Sunday's game. They had their first game against the Padres last night, and we're wrapping up that series against San Diego. Always a tough team to face with all the great additions that they've made so far. But the biggest story I have to probably bring up to you guys is about Francisco Alvarez, who, of course, is Major League Baseball's #1 top prospect. And he was called up because Omar Narvaez went down with an injury. He's been shelved for a couple of months. So Alvarez gets the call. And you would think top prospect is going to get the most amount of starts. And as of right now, that doesn't seem to be the case. The Mets are running with Tomas Nido, who I believe, if he didn't win the Gold Glove, was a Gold Glove finalist last year at catcher for the National League. So Alvarez has been seeing a lot more time on the bench. So getting the Met fan perspective, starting with Joe, what are we thinking here of the Mets' handling of Alvarez so far this season?
Yeah, listen, they're going to be conservative with him. I'd like to see them, especially early in the season, give him more leeway, have him start, 2 out of 3 games instead of what it seems to be the opposite right now. Listen, we go through the games that he's been up for. I get the first game called up. They plan to start Nido, understand that. I even, to a degree, understand him not catching Senga, between a language barrier, between the unfamiliarity with him. I can understand that. Last night, for example, I don't understand it. He should have started last night. End up not mattering. Nido caught the game. The Mets won. The Mets one hit the Padres. It was, or at least was until the 9th inning. He is starting tonight. He does have a familiarity with Peterson, who's pitching tonight. They pitched together as a battery down in the minors. So I understand it from that perspective. But it looks like it's probably going to be an even split going forward. The Mets obviously love Nido's glove. He is a fantastic defensive catcher. He cannot hit a lick, but he is a very, very solid backstop. I think the Mets are finding that important here in the early going. But at the end of the day, Alvarez is probably going to partially control how much playing time he gets. I mean, if he hits home runs and he hits the way his bat is projected to be, he's going to earn the lion's share of the playing time. I think until that point, you're going to see a 50-50 right now.
Yeah, and I think in terms of catching, Nido is definitely the better catching option. Like Rich, you said before, too. I mean, he's got a great glove. Nito. I trust him a lot behind the plate. I think he calls a great game with his pitchers. I 100% agree with Joe's point, too, with Senga coming off of his first outing. We know Senga had the rough first inning. After that, absolutely locked in. While we're still trying to get Senga acclimated to the big leagues, let's keep him with Nito. No issues there. But there really is a path here to have Alvarez play most of the games while also having Nito catch majority of the games here. It's a little tricky because you don't want to have your catcher get hurt and then your second catcher DHing, but there really is no excuse for Alvarez to not be in the lineup versus any lefty pitcher. Whether you're sneaking him in a game at DH or having him straight lefty-righty platoon at catcher with Nito, you need Alvarez playing at least half of the games up here because it's not like Narvaez is going to be out for a week or two and you're just looking for a guy to start a couple of games. Narvaez is going to be out for about 2 months.
Yeah.
That's a lot of development time wasted with Alvarez. And the whole point of Alvarez starting in the minors this year was to get more time behind the plate. Well, if he's not getting time behind the plate in the minor leagues and you're not going to be playing him frequently in the major leagues, when's he getting this time? Is this going to impact his development now where in the second half of this season when the games seem to matter that much more, is he not going to get the playing time then? There's really no excuse. You have to play him at minimum 50% of the playing time. But the bigger reason why he's up here right now, if you look at the way the roster is constructed at the moment, he was the only other healthy catcher on the 40-man roster. They would have had to made a couple of roster moves to activate someone else, such as a Michael Perez. I know he had a very brief stint with the team last year. He's not on the 40 right now. You have Nick Meyer there as well in Syracuse at the moment. So Alvarez was the only healthy catching option. So you had to make the call. But you can't waste his bat. You can't waste his development. Granted, you go into this, it's still early in the year. All right. He's going to learn from his mistakes. Let him work behind the plate. Don't catch Senga because I want Senga. Him and Nito, they got some sort of vibe. Keep it going as the Mets take a 1-0 lead here in the bottom of the fourth.
But you're ahead of my stream.
Yeah.
I'm still on 1-1.
Yeah,
so.
but we'll see what happens here. And the other thing that was interesting too with Alvarez, before we jump to another talking point, and before we give it to Tom and Rich for yourselves to chime in from a Yankee fan perspective on Alvarez, the interesting talking points with the Mets in spring training was how good the young kids were looking. Ironically, of the 4 top prospects for the Mets, Alvarez actually looked the worst during spring training. He looked a little rough. And of the 4, I didn't think Mauricio was ready. He needs a little more development. He's still really young. But Alvarez, I fully bought into Alvarez starting in AAA. Let him catch 5 out of 7 games a week in AAA. A whole different argument for Beatty and Vientos, especially Beatty. We'll get more into that in a moment here. But of the 4 kids, he's the first one to get the crack. Not by the chosen reason by the Mets. I'm sure they would have liked to keep him in AAA. But while he's in the majors, you cannot waste that development time. He needs to play at least 50% of the games.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, Francisco Alvarez is not just the Mets' top prospect. He's the top prospect in all of baseball right now. If he is wherever he is playing, whether it's AAA or he's with the major league team, he needs to play. He absolutely needs to play for his development. Or just his value. If the Mets don't see him, if maybe they want to move him as a trade piece, having him up on the major league roster and not starting him really devalues him. I know he wasn't as, when he came up last year, he wasn't, unbelievable. He wasn't like a phenom, like a lot of people might thought he would be, but, prospects are not always going to catch on that quick. Yankees have seen that with Anthony Volpe so far, but they've started him every game up until tonight, and they just gave him an off night tonight to get back at it tomorrow. I understand shortstops and catchers are very different positions and playing time, but when Alvarez is here, I don't think it's 50% of the time. He needs to be in the lineup 2 out of every 3 days at least. If not, it says a lot of bad things about him, which I don't think are true. But I think it does signal some things that maybe the Mets don't see him contributing as much to the team, or they don't think he can if he's not going to be putting him in the lineup over. And again, Nito's a good defensive catcher, but I mean, Alvarez is supposed to be a generational catcher. He needs to play.
Yeah, I mean, and to kind of echo what Corey was saying about the catching depth, and I get you can look into the possible option if Alvarez is your primary right-handed hitting DH with Nito drawing more of the starts at catcher. Then who would you have on the bench between a guy like a Michael Perez or Nick Meyer? Regardless, you do have to create a roster spot. And, with some simple bookkeeping, they can create that roster spot. However, on the major league level, you have players that are just out of options and you just can't send anywhere else right now. So that's the tough part of their roster configuration. They do have a bit of a logjam at DH, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you guys are still running out the Tommy Pham, Daniel Vogelback platoon at the designated hitter spot. So it's already tough to try to get Alvarez there. For me, if we're gonna value the defense of Nito, which I completely understand, seeing that on the Yankee side of it, we're reliant on Jose Trevino and Kyle Higashioka, who are defensive first catchers, and we can understand that the offense is not going to be there. You just got to send down Alvarez then. Give him his at-bats, give him his time behind the plate. I think that would be the best move for them, and then create that roster spot for Michael Perez or Nick Meyer by maybe sending Narvaez to the 60-day IL, seeming that he's going to be out for a little bit. So I think that's the move. It's going to stunt his development to bench him as an Alvarez. I say you got to demote Alvarez at this rate if Nito's going to draw more of the starts.
Correct. And you brought up a great point to it, Narvaez and the 60-day IL. I mean, 60-day IL takes you just over 8 weeks. They're projecting him 8 to 10 weeks. So unless they're trying to be optimistic and maybe he comes back 6 to 8 as opposed to 8 to 10. But honestly, at that point, you don't want to have that logjam with the roster. Go ahead. I 100% agree with what you said, Rich. 60-day IL Narvaez. He's not coming back before then anyway. And then call up Michael Perez and call it a day.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'd say that's the move. Joe, you got something on this?
I mean, listen, I'm under the impression that Buck is just going to make the young kid earn it. In 5 games, Nito started 3 of them. Alvarez has started 2 of them since he's been up. Let's go the next week or so. We know Senga's going to get Nito behind the plate. And I think Scherzer's probably going to get his choice of who he wants to throw to. But at the end of the day, let's see Alvarez hit and put himself in a position where Buck has no choice. This Mets team, I'm a little worried about the offense. This is the chance to get that offensive player you've been missing. Listen, Escobar's not going anywhere for the time being. If you want the speed of LeCastro on the roster, Beatty's not going to be able to come up. There's nowhere to go. Vogelback's staying as the left-handed DH for now. It looks like Pham is going to be in the outfield rotation for the time being as well. He's making, I think, $6.5 or $7 million this year. So, this is
nothing
the roster bar an injury right now, and the way to add offense that you didn't expect is to have Alvarez as a catcher in the lineup. I think that's the way to increase the offensive production of this team.
And listen, I know you mentioned, Buck wants to have him earn it. I don't think this can be Buck's call. A number 1 prospect in all of baseball is an organizational decision. Mm-hmm. And if he is here, he needs to play. Yeah, Buck can't. I don't. And I know we've gone back and forth of the roles of managers in previous episodes, but this is not just Buck deciding, which catcher is going to start. This is the number 1 prospect in baseball. He has a tremendous value, and if he's someone who could bring, if the Mets are going to trade him, a huge return if that's something they wanted to do. If he's here, he has to play.
Yep. Yeah. 100%.
It'll be interesting to see
where down, that's fine too.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see where Alvarez ends up, and hopefully, and I have a soft spot for catchers. Hopefully, the guy finds his way into the lineup. But if it's not there, AAA it is. Any other Met stories? I know Justin Verlander is I think his status updated. We're looking at possibly a mid to late April return, maybe. So, what's the latest on Justin Verlander here, guys?
Yeah, so we went for a second imaging on the I guess we'll call it the shoulder, but underneath the shoulder, which leave it to the Mets to come up with an injury I haven't heard of in a while. Verlander downplayed this from the start, said if it were the playoffs, he'd be pitching. So the Mets are just taking it easy. No reason to think that this is going to be a long-term issue. He's going to come back. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back, let's say, that week of the 24th at the end of April. That'll give him 2 or 3 rehab starts and a chance to kind of re-stretch himself. I'm not concerned with him. I trust Verlander. His history is very clean aside from the Tommy John surgery. I'd be more concerned if this was Scherzer. Scherzer tends to have more lingering things pop up in recent years, but he'll be fine. And right now, the Mets are in a good position. Aside from Carlos Carrasco, they've been pretty good on the pitching front so far. So I don't. There's no reason to rush him back at this particular moment.
Correct. Yeah, we'll see when Verlander comes back. It sounds like they are not going to bring him back for the West Coast trip, which is unfortunate because I'm following the Mets on the West Coast next week, and I was hoping to maybe get his Mets debut. But right now, listen, like Joe said, they're going to keep rolling with McGill, Peterson. And right now, the two of those guys filling in for Verlander and Quintana have been pretty good. I know Peterson a little up and down, but having a good game tonight. He's got no runs into the top of the 5th inning. Tyler McGill won his first 2 games. ERA right now 1.64, so no issues there. Carrasco right now is the guy that looks a little shaky. I know it's early in the year, so I'm not worrying just yet. But if Verlander came back today, I don't necessarily want to put McGill or Peterson back into the pen. I might want to think about Carrasco, maybe trying to give him 1 or 2 innings out of long relief, be that type of long man option out of the pen. We'll see what ends up happening. They still got another week or so until Verlander comes back and they have to worry about it. But Carrasco's a little interesting right now. We'll see what happens. But Tyler McGill, huge shout out for McGill. He's been pitching very well, filling in. And overall, too, I mean, another big thing I want to call out last night with the Mets was the bullpen. So coming out now with after the Diaz injury, and the question was, how good is this Mets bullpen going to be, especially in the later innings? Because you went from having arguably, and we had him ranked as the best reliever in the game going into the 2023 season, arguably the best closer in the 9th or sometimes the 8th, because Buck likes to do that once in a while. And then you had guys like Robertson, like Ottavino, as 7th and 8th inning guys. Well, now they're each getting bumped up an inning. But I'll tell you what, Drew Smith last night looked great.
Yeah.
Curtis looked great in the 6th inning. Ottavino, Robertson, they did exactly what you expect to have them in the 8th and 9th inning. So the bullpen
Raley's been the only one that's been a little shaky for me to start this year. Raley
a little shaky.
Seems like he's been struggling. I know that Buck had to go get him the other night. So he's the one who's gotten me nervous so far. Listen, there's always going to be one, but that's so far so good with the bullpen with the Mets.
Exactly. And major shout out to Nogasek because he ate up a ton of innings against the blowout loss on Sunday.
Yep.
So thank
3
you.
2/3, right? 1 run. Listen. That on games like that, that's all you can hope for. You hope your long guy comes in, eats up as many innings, and saves your bullpen. In a loss that's 10-0, they only used 3 pitchers, I think, the whole game.
And that game,
and with that Mets bullpen, they had a ton of guys vying for a few spots left, and Nogasek emerged as one of those players, and so far he's looked good. So good decision so far on the Mets. But we're gonna keep on moving. We'll get into some Yanks talk in a little bit. We do have our next segment, which Joe is going to preview. But Joe, while you're doing that, what's the best way for our viewers to tell their buddies to join us here on Twitch?
Yeah, so you can download Twitch and subscribe to Empire State of Baseball. The link is in our link tree on Instagram and on Twitter. You can download the app. You can view it in the web browser on Twitch. Go ahead, download that. Watch our shows. Get notifications when we go live. You can comment and join us in the chat in the community. Chat's quiet tonight. We need some more activity. But we'll engage with you guys and put your comments on screen from time to time. So
it's a hangover episode. The hangover episode for everybody, for the 4 of us here, for our chat. Last week was crazy. So I'm sure we're gonna get those viewers as the show moves along. And why not? We have some fun segments coming up, and one of those, of course, include the Fantasy Hot Corner. And the Fantasy Hot Corner presented by one of those chooches that we see regularly in our chat, Mr. Jonathan Hernandez, who's a fantasy expert and has won our own fantasy league multiple times, Joe and Corey. I know Joe long before your time, before you actually got into the league. But John's a fantasy expert. Love talking fantasy baseball with John. Give him a follow at jhertz, 2 Z's, 3 2s. And with that said, let's turn over to John for the Fantasy Hot Corner. Look at that, new graphic too. So John's already getting a promotion. All right, Fantasy Hot Corner, John Hernandez, everybody.
Hot Corner. Let's go out to Queens for the player spotlight of the week. Let's talk about Mr. Kodai Senga making his MLB debut from Japan. Only been 2 starts. Both of them are against the Marlins, but the Ghost Ball seems like it'll play just fine in the major league level. 2 starts, Senga has pitched 11 in the 3rd innings with 14 strikeouts and a 1.59 ERA. Walks have been a little bit of an issue, but the Mets and fantasy owners have to be happy with the early return they've gotten from Senga.
Yeah, Kodai Senga, man. Love what I'm seeing out of Kodai from across the pond. Senga's been great. The ghost forkball is fantastic. Everything about it is awesome. Kodai Senga, Corey Favs. I know you have had a lot to say about Mr. Kodai.
100%. I'll tell you what, Kodai Senga right now, it's almost become the equivalence of DeGrom, not in terms of the output, but in terms of you want to watch this guy pitch. I mean, watching DeGrom out there, it was always a work of art, the way he plowed through an opposing team's lineup. Watching Senga, and it's the same out pitch with the ghost fork. The guy is such an intriguing. It's almost I can't even talk right now. Must watch TV when he's out there on the mound. I love watching him pitch. I have him in our fantasy league. Couldn't love that more. But it's been so great watching Senga. I'm looking forward to him. And I know his first 2 starts were against the Marlins. I'm very intrigued to see his first start against a better team than the Marlins. But there's no reason to believe why he can't go out and do the same. I mean, his ghost fork looks great. Him and Nito, keep it up. Keep doing exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, I think Senga's been fantastic. He's been everything you hope for. It makes you wonder why there were some doubts about him coming out. He has legitimately 3 major league plus pitches with his fastball topping out, 97, 98 at sometimes. That fork ball that is a completely different weapon than most major leaguers have seen. And he's even got a slider that works very well for himself. So he's been fantastic. I expect this to be up. And, when somebody like this comes over, this is not a rookie, even though he qualifies as one. This is a professional pitcher. He's coming in with a vast advantage in that nobody has ever seen him before, and he is ready to pitch in the major leagues. And when you come in with a pitch like that forkball, that is, we could call it ghost fork, but it's a forkball. Very few, you can count the number of pitchers on one hand that throw that pitch in the major leagues right now. When you come in with a weapon like that, it really, really puts the hitters off balance because it takes them a couple times to get used to it. And we saw 2 starts in with the Marlins. They still couldn't figure it out. So I expect Senga to have a very good year. Listen, control's going to be on and off for a little while. That's part of the game, especially with the Japanese pitchers. The ball's a little bit bigger. They have to adjust their grip. That's going to be a work in progress as you go. There are going to be some different days, especially in the middle of the summer when things get hot and sticky and who knows. So that's my thought behind it.
Thomas, I'm going to relieve you from the Mets talk for a little bit because I want you to touch on this next player because obviously this is a 2-part bit. Kodai Senga, John's player spotlight. So let's turn over to John's fantasy pickup of the week and see which fantasy owners should take a stab on as we get into the crux of this fantasy season.
For the fantasy pickup, lack of production all year long. Let's talk about catcher. Logan O'Hoppe from the Los Angeles Angels is off to a good start this year as a rookie. He's got 3 home runs, 9 RBIs, hitting .250, which is more than most catchers give you throughout the season as it is. He's hit 26 home runs in AA last year, and the power should translate to the major league level. Catchers are tough to come by, especially ones that are good offensively. So this offensive first catcher should be giving you a good return early. He's available in about 65% of leagues in ESPN. Good luck to everyone in their matchups this week, and let's go Mets.
And thank you, Jonathan, for the fantasy hot corner. Logan O'Hoppe or O'Hoppe. I don't know if we confirmed what the correct pronunciation of it is, but we like Logan O'Hoppe regardless. Tom, what are your thoughts on the young Angels catcher?
Listen, my thoughts are I just learned about Logan about 10 seconds ago. So a lot of thoughts really going through my head. I did check, to see his ownership rate is, huge gains, 30% up in ESPN, and I think it was like 25% up in Yahoo. Catching is in major leagues is the wasteland of your batting order, and in fantasy it's even more of the wasteland. So listen, if you got a guy with some pop and he's doing the thing, unless you're holding one of those top 2 or 3 guys. One of my leagues I have Rutschman, so probably not going to be a candidate here. In my other league, he's not available, so I can't. I know I like to pick up some of John's guys to give him a run, but my other league, the Big Dumper, will have to still do. Listen, if you got a catcher who can give you some home runs, especially in something like a points league where he can just pop some homers and give you a boost, definitely worth a shot.
And we actually put an Instagram poll together with John's video, so you can check it out on Empire State of Baseball's Instagram. John puts up the 2 picks. With Logan O'Hop, we asked who's the best catcher in the AL West right now, because we love AL West catchers. And Cal Raleigh, the Big Dumper, has got the primary amount of votes. So yes, Big Dumper, I guess you can't go wrong with. I also have him in fantasy as well. I think he's a bust waiting to happen. But that's neither here nor there. But I do like Logan O'Hoppy. O'Hop's got some pop, and I like it. 3 homers as a young catcher at this stage of the season. Do like what I'm seeing out of the Angels catcher. And the Angels starting to put that. What was that, Joe? I heard something.
Good lineup to be into, because when you get past the heart of that order, pitchers look to take a break for those guys who are batting down in the order, and Logan's probably in that lineup is probably batting 8 or 9, and they're going to look to take the proverbial batter off. So he should get a lot of pitches to hit, especially early on before pitchers start to figure him out.
And listen, again, I just learned who Logan O'Hoppy or Hope or Hop is, but he is the Angels' top rated prospect. So this, seems like a guy who isn't just maybe catching lightning in a bottle. This could be a guy who's going to be become a household name, and we will find out if it's O'Hoppy or O'Hop by the All-Star break.
ESP fans, help us out. Is it O'Hop? Is it O'Hoppy? Is it O'Hop? I don't know. Just O'Hoppe. Yes, we forgot about the accent on the E. O'Hoppe. Corey, what is it? What do you think it is? O'Hop?
I'm going O'Hop. I like the pop from O'Hop. I thought that was a good line.
John Sterling would do with that name.
Oh boy, we'd be hopping for days here. Doing a quick live Mets check-in before we jump into our social media segment here. Do want to call out the Mets opted to pitch to Manny Machado with 2 on and 2 out, and on a 2-2 count, he had a 2-run double. They opted to pitch to the righty Machado with Peterson on the mound, as opposed to going to Juan Soto, who they proceeded to get out.
Which primarily our host voted as the NL MVP for the 2023 season.
Correct.
Which you can check out that episode on
Mr. Thomas. Take us away.
Somewhere. Probably. You can find it on YouTube. So if you're watching us live, we want to thank you joining in the chat, getting involved here. But if you can't watch us live, need to watch on the replay. All of our replays are available on YouTube. We also have some cut up segments like the Homer Bush interview from last week. So you could find us again on YouTube, search Empire State of Baseball, also in our link tree, which is attached to all of our socials. You could find us there and give us a follow, like, share, and subscribe, or follow or subscribe, or whatever. Just the thing where you get the notifications and comes to your phone.
Listen to the man, damn it. A lot of good stuff up on YouTube, some clips. Joe was kind enough to actually cut down the Homer Bush interview out of our show from last week. Our episode was fantastic, so watch the whole thing. But if you don't have that kind of time, you have maybe a half hour to spare, check out the Homer Bush interview, of course. And there's some good episodes over the last few weeks. We did our March Madness greatest baseball movie of all time bracket. Find out who won on that thing. That was a tough one, especially those finals. We did World Series predictions among the 2023 predictions here. Joe taking a gamble on the Mets. And, of course, the Homer Bush interview from last week. And make sure to give Homer some love on his socials. But more importantly, get the Ferry Hawks some love on the social media. April 28th is just around the corner for opening day for the for the Ferry Hawks and the ALPB season. So used to saying the other team. Forgot about that. All right, anyway. Let's move on to some Yankee baseball. Why not, Thomas? Let's talk Yankees here. In the Bronx is burning. Of course, we're going to do our wraparound of the New York Yankees. And after tonight's episode and after the Yankees' current actually, Yankees just won 11-2. Look at that. I just had a John Sterling moment on the show. Yankees just sealed it up 11-2 in Cleveland. So I'll have that Yankees recap later on tonight on Instagram. And Corey, great job, by the way. The Mets on the Mets Minute making its debut last night. Got to give Corey a shout out. So
Mets
love that,
Minutes are here, and there will be another one later tonight.
Excellent. So make sure to give us a follow there. So anyway, Bronx is burning. Let's get to some Yankees talk. The Yankees beat the Orioles over the weekend. They dropped last night's tough game to Cleveland. And now obviously heading into the rubber game for tomorrow afternoon. They're also going to be set to face the Twins for a 4-game set following the Thursday off day. So the Yankees making their central tour. But let's talk about some of the pluses for the Yanks. Some of the depth pieces that we've covered in our Instagram poll from earlier. The next man up mentality is real, Tom. We've kind of seen this over the last 4 or 5 seasons. You know, when some big players go down, the Yankees have a knack for bringing up somebody that you just don't expect to really thrive in the moment. And for this team, it looks like Franchy Cordero is having the season of his life. What do you take out of Cordero and some of the progress of the players we've seen so far?
I mean, Cordero's been a guy who has bounced around a little bit, had a really good spring training with the Orioles, who ended up cutting him loose with that. They do have a pretty crowded outfield with young talent, so they cut him loose there. He's been a guy he's a hard hit guy. So it's been he's one of those guys that, you know, I'm sure an organization would love to unlock that consistency and try to get it. So he's making more contact with the hard hitting. Which the Yankees have seemed to be able to do so far. At least he had another home run tonight. If he can do that, and he's this year's Matt Carpenter, if he can become, you know, the next kind of Gio Urshela, the guy the Yankees find, and you know, be able to, you know, start consistently, that'd be great. Yankees also have a pretty loaded outfield and don't need another right fielder. So we'll see what happens as guys get back, like Bader gets back and then Judge gets pushed back to right. It'll be an interesting conversation. But you have to love what you've seen so far. Willie Calhoun has played pretty well. He had a pretty decent game today. It's a roster that have a lot of older guys who are going to get hurt. A lot of like injury plagued guys on this team. You're going to always be bringing up these some of these journeymen or minor leaguers, and it's been great to say.
I give the organization credit. I hammered them pretty hard for the Franchy Cordero signing after we saw that Rafael Ortega and Willie Calhoun were the last possibilities for that final spot on the bench to be that 4th outfielder. You saw them go at it all spring training, and I thought they did a pretty good job. You know, since both of them profile as the same kind of player, left-handed hitter with some pop, and then the Yanks go ahead and sign Franchy. And I was like, oh, that's a little bit of disrespect right there. You know, those two did pretty well, and out of nowhere they signed Cordero. So I kind of bashed him for the move, but I look like a fool right now because Cordero is doing really well. Calhoun found himself on the roster after the injury for Donaldson, so it's good to see him back up there. The Yankees, the Yankees have a knack for doing this. You know, we saw a few years ago with Gio Urshela and Mike Tauchman. You know, these names pop up out of nowhere, and they emerge to really help out the team. And this is where I have to go to the contrarian that is Joe Pugliese here. How long is this going to last for the Yankees, in your opinion? I mean, you've seen this play out before. For some guys, it's worked out, and for others, you see them tail off really quickly. Can these guys hold the Yankees together while they're waiting on some of their big guys to return?
Yeah, listen, I mean, you know, Cordero, we've seen this from Cordero before. That you guys saw him on the Red Sox. He gets hot for a month. He plays well. You think that he's finally reached his potential, and then he can't touch a ball anymore. So we'll see if that changes with the Yankees. We see if the Yankees inject some kind of life. The pressure's off on him. You know, but right now their depth is being tested. I mean, these guys are emergency guys who were not supposed to get a significant amount of playing time. So we're going to see how that goes. Aaron Hicks, I don't know what his story is going to be on this team. Once Bader comes back, he might be the odd man out and sit the majority of the time, especially if these guys stay hot. You know, it's really being tested. But for now, and what the Yankees do better than anybody, you mentioned it, with the Matt Carpenters of the world, they find that guy off the trash heap that adheres to that ballpark and that AL East the best out of anybody, and they get production out of them. That's what the Yankees have done for a long, long time. For me, I'm more concerned with the Yankees' pitch in depth and what they're doing in that rotation. They have a lot of injuries. Rodon just had a setback. It sounds like it's going to be a minor one, but we've seen what happened when Rodon's gotten hurt, Severino's gotten hurt. The next guys up are Clark Schmidt and Domingo Germán. And unfortunately, we've seen over the past few days, those guys are not going to be good enough to keep the Yankees hot on the trails of the blazing hot Rays all year long. So they need to get their pitching back healthy to have a shot at this.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with the Yankees with the injuries. I mean, the big thing with the Yankees is the core of that lineup going to stay healthy over the course of the season. I know we always talk about Judge and Stanton, and then with the injuries. If those two are healthy, you throw in a DJ LeMahieu, you throw in a Rizzo, I think they'll be okay. They'll make it work because you're talking guys like a Frenchie Cordero, for example. You're not talking a guy who you want hitting second, third, or fourth in your lineup. So we'll see what ends up happening over there. But as long as they stay healthy, I do think you guys will end up being okay. I think the pitching depth is definitely the bigger concern. Right now, I mean, Clark Schmidt's a guy that I was actually pretty happy was getting the shot here in the rotation, and his number's not good. He's got an ERA right around 9 in only a couple of starts. So we'll see what ends up happening with him too. Hopefully Rodon and Severino aren't out too long. I know Joe mentioned the Rodon setback, but we'll see what ends up happening there. But right now, just ride the lightning in a bottle. Enjoy that fun while it lasts with French fry. I love all the French fry tweets out there on Twitter. But we'll see what ends up happening. I know Volpe, nice spring training, made the roster, not having the hottest start of the season. Everybody just settle down, relax. I have no worries about Volpe. He's going to be fine. Give him some patience. Lightning in a bottle with some of these guys, like a French fry Cordero. But the pitching depth, you can't afford to lose a Cole. If Cole ends up going down, that team's in serious, serious trouble. So see what happens. Let's start to get some of these guys back. Let's get a Bader back in there, see what happens, and kind of roll from there.
Yeah, I thought you were going there, Rich. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, we haven't mentioned. We're talking about the Yankee pitching depth being an issue. We haven't brought up Johnny Brito yet, who has been phenomenal so far. Again, just 2 starts, but you couldn't ask more out of 2 starts from a young kid. Let's see if he can keep it going. I know we're early in the season, and the Rays are going to lose. I want to just go on the record to say the Rays will lose a game at some point this season. You only can play the teams that are on the schedule. Granted, they've been pretty horrible teams so far, but that's not the Rays' fault. You got to beat who's in front of you. So we'll see when they come back down to earth. The Yankees have looked good. They've won all their series. They can win another series again tomorrow. I know last year we talked a lot about it. Just you feel good when your team wins a series, especially the second out road series of the year. We'd love to see them take another series. I don't even know who Cleveland's pitching tomorrow. They don't have it listed. Clark Schmidt is going to go for the Yankees. It's been concerning. I know lefties especially have been lighting him up. So we'll see what Cleveland throws at him. Hopefully he can get himself figured out. And if not, he's going to be probably the first candidate when someone comes back to go into the bullpen. Brito at this point has to be the last option to be kicked either to the bullpen or back down to the minors if he stays the way he has. But we have a long way from there. You just got to, win now, figure out the rest later. You can't get too ahead of yourselves with a lot of these kind of roster crunch moves.
And that's the big thing.
Yeah, I mean, Brito's got to be the guy. To
Yep.
me, he's the one that's earned his spot into the rotation. I think between Germán and listen, I'm not saying we're sending down Germán or Schmidt following these guys coming back. I think these 2 guys are viable options for the bullpen. You can never have enough relievers, as Met fans know best, and as baseball
100%.
fans know best. You can never have enough relievers. And as far as the Guardians, yes, you did mention the pitcher, the probable for tomorrow is unlisted. The Guardians had some weird things happen with their pitching rotation. They lost Tristan McKenzie at the beginning of the year. They just lost Aaron Savali to the IL, so they're trying to figure it out. Cal Quantrill, Zach Plesac are on tab to pitch on Friday and Saturday. So it could be a bullpen game for the Guardians. So hopefully that results in a Yankees win. But the Yankees also did lose a game to Matt Strahm of the Phillies last week. So we'll see what pans out of that. But for the Yanks, yep, they've got to keep winning series. So rubber game tomorrow against the Guardians. We did mention Anthony Volpe. I know, Corey, you did allude to Anthony Volpe before. And yes, the plan has to be stick with Volpe. You got to stick with the guy through
Correct.
thick or thin. He got his off day today. Oswaldo Cabrera is there at shortstop. I'm sure they're Yankee fans who are thinking, well, you have Cabrera who could play this position. When you do get Bader back, could you send down Volpe and keep Cabrera at shortstop? Is that an option?
No,
and I just think
now.
that is the wrong
And if
way
you
to
think
go
that,
about
you're an
it.
idiot.
Correct.
To be honest, to be frank with you guys, I think I said give it maybe 2 or 3 months. I actually am wrong. I say you run the entire season with Volpe as a shortstop.
The only difference is
campaign.
the only
You've
difference
seen
is
the progression. Sorry, Corey. I know you're.
Yeah, the only way I'll disagree with you is if you're fighting for a playoffs. The Yankees are making the playoffs, but if you're fighting for the division with the Rays and Volpe sitting 200, then you got to make the change. I don't think that's going to be the case, though, and you're not making that change in April.
No.
It's way too early. Like Tom said, we're not doing roster crunches here in April where you're panicking. They only played 12 games right now. 6 and 5. Actually, what is it now? What are they now? 6 and 4 or 7 and 4 after tonight's game. So, yeah. So no roster crunch now. The time you worry about Volpe is if you're in the middle of the summer and all of a sudden he's still hitting like 200. When you got a guy like maybe Peraza knocking on the door there at shortstop, it's way too early to make any changes there or even consider a change.
Listen, the thing with Volpe is you just don't want him, with all the pressure that's on him, you don't want him to take that with him on the field. You don't want him to be botching routine ground balls. You don't want him to be just putting non-competitive at-bats up there. He's not doing that right now. From everything I've seen, he's been perfectly fine in the field. It's not like he's making errors. If he gets to the point where he's beating himself up, that's when you have to make the switch. I think Boone is handling this perfectly. Struggling for a few days, sit him down for a night, take a break, come back tomorrow. Okay, we'll do it again, see what we got to do. But you know what? Part of this is the pressure of the expectation that he is the next guy, that these Yankee fans, the organization, they have put on him. Boone is trying to protect him. I think he's doing a good job of it so far. I think Volpe is handling it fine. And like I said, as long as he doesn't bring it onto the field where you visibly see the pressure on a play and play basis and an at-bat basis, he should be fine. But you get to June and he's still struggling and he's kind of taking it with him out there on the field. You might have to make the switch.
Yeah, at this point, he does seem kind of like a kid out there. He is a kid, and it almost looks like a kid who's trying really hard. It just looks like he's almost playing how you'd play like high school ball. You're just like gritty and grimy and die for this, and it almost looks like he needs to like take a breath. And listen, if you look through his progression through the minors, he's struggled as he's moved up to the next level for a little bit, and then he's caught on. So I think Rich, we're kind of getting to that before. You have to give him run. He has to, be up here for 2-3 months. And listen, if after 2-3 months he's like Joe said, he's hitting under 200 and he's not playing well in the field, and you have Oswald Peraza there, then maybe that's the time to send him down.
Tom. That's exactly
you gotta let him go.
That's exactly what I was going to allude to. He struggled in Hudson Valley. It took him the whole season to kind of get his footing. He struggled in Somerset to start off. He was fantastic the rest of the way. He didn't get enough bats in Scranton to kind of find himself. He did get called up towards the end of last season. And so obviously now we're seeing, again, he's struggling right now. At the beginning, it didn't seem like he was overmatched. He was in a lot of accounts. Now you're starting to see these bats where he's a bit overmatched. I say still run with it, regardless of what happens. You saw last year with Bobby Witt Jr. and Jeremy Pena, who started off very slow. It took him a season to try to get it going. Adley Rushman and Julio Rodriguez, who are obviously completely different positions, but still top-rated prospects, were horrible in their first month in the pros. And these guys finished in the first and second place of the Rookie of the Year. I say run with the kid. See what you got there. Oswald Peraza is hurt. You do have the internal option. You saw tonight with Cabrera. You could possibly flip him at shortstop. But because you don't have a clear set shortstop ready to take that spot, you got to run with Volpe and see this kid progress in the majors.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Correct. No time now to make a change. It's way too early in the season. We're only in week 2, so it's plenty of time.
Anthony, if you're watching the replay on the YouTube right now, you know these got off the field, so you're probably not watching on Twitch. But if you're watching on YouTube, just take a breath, my guy. Just take a breath.
Exactly.
You're good. Your spot is secure. Just work some counts. Get on base. Keep stealing those bags. And I mean, Yankee fans are going to be. You're just like tailor-made. You're going to be like every Yankee fan's favorite player. We're all excited to see you.
100%.
This is not an anti-Volpe podcast. So this is the show you want to listen to after your games. We're pro Anthony Volpe. We want to see it. We want to see in the lineup, and hopefully something like a day off today helps him tomorrow. So we're gonna move on to our final bit before we get there. Corey Favs, one of our social media darlings lately. What's the best way to follow us on all of our social media platforms for Empire State of Baseball?
Yeah, listen, you want to hear our second debut of the ESB Mets Minute? Follow us on Instagram at Empire State of Baseball. That's a new segment we're going to be doing after Mets and Yankee games throughout the course of this year, doing both the Mets and Yankees daily update. Follow us on Instagram for that daily reel in your feed. You can also follow us on Twitter. It's been a great week for us on Twitter. We built a lot of new following out there. For all of our new listeners, thank you again for tuning in and following and interacting with us. Love to interact with you all on Twitter. At ESB Podcast is our Twitter handle. You could each follow us individually as well. Myself at G Gory, Joe at JR Pugs, Rich at Rich J Rivera, and Tom at 2Spill on Twitter. Go ahead and give us a follow.
Yes, absolutely. We thank you all for the support. Hitting the 600 follower plateau on Twitter is a great accomplishment. So we're just going to keep it rolling as we move into the rest of this 2023 regular season. But with the 2023 season and our season 2 premiere, which obviously kicked off last week, it's time to bring back another fun segment here on tonight's show. It is Trick of the Trade, where a couple of us are going to throw out an old trade that happened in years past, one involving the Yankees, one involving the Mets, and there's going to be one missing piece of the trade, and it's up to the other host to try to guess what that piece of the trade is. And, of course, we're keeping standings together, and so far, Homer Bush is kicking all our asses right now because he got the guess of the graph right. So who's going to tie Homer Bush? Who's going to pass Homer Bush? We're going to find out in just a little bit with our first trick of the trade. Corey, you do have our first trade here with the New York Metropolitans. What do we have?
Yeah, we got a little bit of a throwback trade here, all right? And this was in August, back when they had the old waiver deadline trade back in scope there, August 30th, 2000, little Subway Series action there. This was a trade that at the time you would not have seen on ESPN. It wouldn't have made the back pages, but looking in hindsight, actually was a decent player leaving the Metropolitans here. Jorge Valendia came over to the Mets. He was really more of a backup, utility-type infielder. Good glove, no bat. The only reason they went ahead and acquired him was because Ray Ordonez got hurt at the time of that trade, so they want to get another defensive first infielder. But they gave up one player. Again, at the time, this was by no means a blockbuster trade. But looking back on it, interesting deal. Before we give any hints, Joe, Rich, Tom, any thoughts on this trade?
Oh, yeah.
So just for clarity,
this is the kind that I'm
Valandia was
thinking.
acquired by the Mets from the A's. So we're trying to guess who the Mets sent back in the deal.
Correct.
I'm just gonna start naming early 2000s A's. I don't think it's
I'm
Miguel Tejada.
I'm gonna go with a Rubio Durazo.
Interesting guess, but no.
Rubio Durazo. Well, we are.
I think he was a Diamondback before, so yeah.
See, this reminds me of that trade, the Mets where they traded Jose Bautista away. Kind of that sense, this player probably took a little while to pan out.
And in that case, find steroids, but
yeah. But I'm that reminds me of that is like a throwaway trade for a depth piece, and this guy, 5 years later ends up
Shea Hildenbrand. No.
Hillenbrand.
Whatever.
Not Shea Hillenbrand. Joe, not a terrible guess either, but it's not Batista. Those throwaway trades are interesting too, because I remember the Mets almost traded David Wright for Wangan back in the day. Thankfully, they didn't do that. But yeah, it's interesting how those throwaway trades somehow pan out.
Oh man,
Trying to
let's
think of the
go-
movie Moneyball. Is this trade in the movie Moneyball?
It is not in Moneyball.
That's the next season, actually.
Well, yeah, that's what I was starting to think. Tom. I was starting to
Let's
think
do
of. I was going back to the bracket we did a few weeks ago. I was thinking of like the Moneyball Oakland A's days. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with Eric Chavez.
Not Eric Chavez,
would
also
be-
not a bad guess because he is current bench coach of the Mets. I will
Yeah.
give you guys 2 hints. I'll start off with one and then give you a chance to answer. It
And of
is a
course,
hitter.
our audience here can also answer
Correct.
too. So.
Hide the chat here.
This is a hitter.
Is a
Offensive player.
And I'll give you one more
Terrence
hint.
Long.
I'll
One
give
more
you
guess.
not Terrence Long. This is the
I like
Oakland
Terrence
Athletics. But the hint I want to give, the Mets are playing the Padres tonight. So figured, you know what? Let's throw a trade in there that also has some Padres relevance there. So a little Padres action tonight with the Mets.
Padres relevance. Is it Matt Lawton?
Matt Lawton.
I love the guess, but it is not Matt Lawton.
No. Okay, so
Ooh,
you
is
love
it-
it, meaning I might be in the ballpark of what kind of player it is.
Is it Nelson Cruz?
It is Nelson Cruz, who's played 5 games for the San Diego
Oh,
Padres this season.
Wow.
You know, he just hit the other end, and I was like, I'm trying to think, is he still active?
Yeah, I thought there was no
I knew
chance
he
this
was
guy
the
was
Mets.
still active.
Yep. When Joe said the Jose Batista thing, I was like, that's not a bad guess because it was in that type of ballpark. A guy who was a no-name player at the time. Nelson Cruz didn't make his debut until 2005 with the Brewers, so it still took about 5 years for him to become relevant. I think the Mets acquired him in 1998, trade him in 2000, didn't make his debut to 05 at the Brewers.
And
I'm
he had a
fairly
very
sure
good
playing
performance on the
today.
Sunday Night Baseball game. Still at his age, I mean, it's incredible what he's able to still put together.
Yep.
Nelson Cruz, but I like it. Nelly Cruz, the Met that no one really knew about there. Good deal. So I do have the Yanks trade, and our Yanks trade also happened around the same vicinity. This is 1999, February 18, 1999, and if you've been watching the show lately, you might know who it is. So. Roger
Homer Bush,
Clemens,
give me the point. I want the
Yankees.
point. Homer Bush. Points for Tom.
I was gonna say it.
Suck it, Rich.
We talked about it last week.
It's Homer Bush.
Listen, we're
Yeah,
keeping.
it's
I'm
Homer
sorry.
Bush. Very
Listen,
good.
Rich. If we weren't keeping score and like a scoreboard this year, I would not have done that. But you know, gotta be competitive. You got there. Gotta put points up. So
You gotta
Yes,
give
I
us a
need-
little bit of difficulty.
I
Put
need to
that
throw
trade back
one
up
more
there again?
shout out to my man, Homer Bush, who was a part of this deal. A
You
crazy
should have taken
trade.
Graham Lloyd out. You should put Homer Bush in and Graham Lloyd out.
All right, but we're also bordering on 2 more minutes until close, so we're actually doing this in time. So I don't regret the pick here, and I get to shout out my man once again, Homer Bush. Thanks
Should
for
be a
coming on the
point
show
for all of
last.
us.
So Homer Bush, of course, is the answer of that epic trade that happened in 1999. So point for Joe and a point for Tom, and a very aggressive Tom Wospil on that guess. Very nicely done, folks. But let's wrap this thing up. It's 8:58. So we're just approaching that time. So starting with Tom, as always, some final words of wisdom for our chooches in the chat.
I want to thank Homer Bush for being traded and getting me possibly my only point of the season. You never know. So I want to make sure I didn't get shut out this year. So I needed to be aggressive on that. And yeah, fun week. Hope the Yankees can get the series win tomorrow and keep this train rolling. I think the Mets still 2-1. San
2-1
Diego there.
Padres.
San Diego, I mean, that was good of a team as you could be playing there. So see how that goes for the rest of that game. But hopefully the Yankees can get the win tomorrow.
Joe.
I'm supposed to say something else. I don't know. What do you want? What do you want from me?
No,
Joe.
thank you for all those new followers on Twitter. All these new members of the community, Mets Yankees community. As of right now, we have 634 followers on Twitter. It's a great job by everybody in the community. We hope more and more of them become listeners as well as followers.
Yep.
And, we hope to see you guys in the chat as well. So thank you for all of them.
Yeah, no, definitely huge shout out to all our new followers there. Also want to give a shout out tonight and a thank you to FanDuel. FanDuel now has the Yankees as no longer the favorite to win the AL East, so I just threw a few bucks on them at plus 155. They might have been minus 155 at the start of the season. So a couple bucks on the Yankees there, plus 155. For all our gamblers out there and Yankee fans, it's a good time to take advantage while the Rays are hot.
Thanks for all our viewers that checked out tonight's show. I know we were last minute on the reschedule here on this Tuesday. We'll be back next Monday on April 17th for some more ESB Yankees Mets talk. Stay tuned on Instagram for the River Ave recap or rewind. We haven't figured it out yet. It's probably going to be the River Ave rewind, which is going to talk about the Yanks game after the show. And we will see you here next Monday, 8 p.m. on Twitch